Hello and welcome to the View from Row Z.
Good evening, and what a week we've had. Lots of stuff to talk about, so I think let's jump straight in with the last week's results, starting at Bournemouth and Newcastle. Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So, Bournemouth Newcastle, a game that certainly on paper looked like it should be a clear Newcastle win, or at least they shouldn't be losing, having lost massively impressively just one game, I believe, all season. And it actually ended up as a 1-1 draw. So, that's a good result for Bournemouth, I think, given their recent poor form.
Yeah, you wouldn't have expected Bournemouth to necessarily come away with anything. As you say, Newcastle one loss all season. It's another draw chalked up for them. I think the thing that I think stands out for me, as per with probably everyone else who follows the Premier League, is Miguel Almiron and how his season has been. He's been phenomenal. Absolutely, I think he scored more goals so far this season than he has his entire Newcastle career to date, by some stretch.
Yeah, it's 100 games, I think, wasn't it? He'd got like 10 in 100 games. He's now got 10 this season, roughly speaking.
Phenomenal, absolutely amazing season. Fair play to him. I think Eddie Howe is getting a tune out of him, and for the tune, long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, perhaps not necessarily not necessarily a massively surprising result in that 1-1. I mean, you could see it happening. Newcastle drawn a lot of games, but certainly wouldn't expect them to lose. But I would say Bournemouth will be the happier of the two, and of course Eddie Howe going back to his old team, so there's always that banana skin there. So 1-1 there, and I think quite a lot of 1-1s actually on that Saturday, the 11th of Feb. I mean, West Ham, Chelsea, 1-1 there.
Yep. Another interesting score on the sheet there. You had Emerson for West Ham, formerly of Chelsea, and a first for João Felix, who's obviously come back from his 3-match suspension. Yeah, Chelsea probably a little bit unlucky to come away with just a draw in that game by the end of the game. But I think it's long-term rebuild for Graham Potter there. Lots of new players have come in. He's clearly an excellent manager. He's done amazing things with Brighton, and Chelsea will be hoping he can recreate that. And this is just a start. Interesting to see how Enzo Fernandez was lining up this week and how he was sort of linking all the lines up, all the channels up. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they develop through the course of the season now.
Yeah, I think so. And they're going to be inconsistent, or perhaps not as cohesive as they have been in the last 10 to 15 years, where the instant success has been required, because it's been a wholesale change, and a lot of the players, or most of the players they brought, haven't played in the league before. So I'm not sure what to expect from them, and I think it's just a case of letting them crack on with it, and then it might even take 6 to 18 months, depending on how it goes, and then they will start to become very, very dangerous. Speaking of dangerous, we had Arsenal 1, Brentford 1. Ivan Toney's quite dangerous.
He is, and he's. I think he's getting as many goals as possible in before he's the forthcoming decision on the betting charges that are against him at the minute. But he's another player who's had a phenomenal season, carrying on from last season. And I mean, Brentford. Just looking at Brentford, generally speaking, how they've been this season, the run they're on at the minute, it's incredible the sort of resources they've got and what Thomas Frank's managing to get out of them.
Massively. It's their second season, I believe, in the league, and normally a lot of the teams in the second season they drop away, it's particularly if they haven't spent much money. And he's done so well.
Sheffield United were a good example of that, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, they were definitely. But what 10 games unbeaten? Including games against Arsenal. He went to Man City and won. So people say, "Oh, bad result for Arsenal." They went to the Etihad and won not that long ago. Also played Tottenham in that time, and I think he played Liverpool.
I think so. I think yeah.
So massively impressive. Over a quarter of a season without losing. They could have won that match. They had several big chances, and of course there was the VAR piece as well, which you might come on to in a separate segment with the sort of the fallout from that. So from an Arsenal perspective, you could say 1-1 was poor in that they needed to win that game, given that the Man City game was coming up. The balance of play, I think 1-1 was fair, because Brentford's goal, they missed a few chances, but it was not a legit goal. But equally, they did create more chances. So balance of play 1-1 was probably fair, I think.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. I think 1-1 was fair. As you say, they missed. Brentford created a lot, but missed a lot. This game's about putting the ball in the net. And as you say, the VAR lack of decision, really. That's sort of that's
it's
the game,
incredible.
really. Yeah.
But Brentford were clever. They played really, really well against Arsenal because, as an Arsenal fan, I watch us more than most. And the tricky bit that we have is when you have that big physical striker like Tony, and you put him 1-on-1, let's say, with Gabriel.
Yeah.
Or Saliba, not to a lesser extent, but he's a little bit inexperienced in the league, but he seems to do quite well with it. And then you also play a second person up front or off him. So you sort of do 2v2 against the centre-backs. That is when we seem to struggle kind of defensively. So it could be a template of how to play. But yeah, another 1-1. And in fact, another 1-1, another VAR dodginess was Crystal Palace beat Brighton. They call it a derby, although they're about 40 miles apart. So it's not really a derby. It's more of a rivalry, perhaps.
Yeah, Pervis Espinan with the goal, which wasn't there. I'm not sure what's going on with VAR. I mean, I think when VAR came in, everyone was a little bit, is this going to make football too clinical? Decisions are going to be yes or no is enough. There's nothing really to talk about in the pub or on a podcast. And I think actually it's probably generating the same, if not more, debate, but just about different things, about processes and how VAR isn't necessarily being used as effectively as it should be. But yeah, it's becoming a massive thing at the minute, and it sounds like the body is taking steps to improve things moving forwards. But that's no consolation for teams like Arsenal and Brighton, who are missing out on points here.
Yeah, and shout out to Brighton. Potter left, and they always seem to have the next person. Whenever they sell a player, whatever manager leaves, they've got the next one ready to go. They know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
They do so well in the league. And I think the next couple of months will be so interesting because you've got Brentford, Brighton, and Fulham on sort of paper above where most people thought they'd be in terms of they're above Chelsea, they're above Liverpool, they're close to Tottenham. And so it's can they maintain that position now over the next few months? It'd be absolutely fascinating to see. It'd be great for the league if they could.
Yeah, I think De Zerbi, since he's come in, has done a brilliant job. Kept the team attacking, and the goals keep flowing. I mean, I remember must have been a season or two ago. Everyone used to say, "Look at Brighton's XG. Like, those expected goals per game is massive, and they're not getting anything near it."
Just need a striker.
You needed a striker. You needed a little bit of luck, and just maybe getting used to the system a little bit more. And you can see how it's just all started to come together for them towards the end of last season, and certainly through this season, and probably even more so since De Zerbi's come in. I mean, you look at Solly March, Mitoma, even Pascal Gross early in the season was really picking up the assists and popping some goals in. So they've got a lot of talent going through that team, and there's experience in there as well. Adam Lallana's there, and he's been there and done all sorts of different things. So yeah, they've got the right mix, I think, of youth and experience, and yeah, it's lovely to see a team you wouldn't necessarily associate with that sort of style of play and to be kicking up in the league where they are. So yeah, fair play.
Definitely. And speaking of teams that have got a good mix of youth and experience, perhaps we'll go to the other end of the scale of the teams that have got the wrong mix of everything, and that's Southampton, who lost at home to Wolves.
Yes, and Nathan Jones obviously dismissed on the back of that.
Jones.
Yeah, it's. I mean, can't say I was surprised because I think since our last pod, the pressers he was coming out with. I think he'd gone off the rails a little bit, lost the plot a little bit, and you then have to sort of question whether the players are thinking the same. Going one up, and Wolves obviously going a man down after less than half an hour, especially at home. You would expect your team to see that out.
Definitely.
And, it just didn't happen for him. And I think after the game he went straight down the tunnel, which is unlike him. Like his time at Luton, and it's not something that he's always had a thing about engaging with fans. And yeah, I think that was sort of summed it up. Really, I just don't think it worked for him. Was it 14 games, and that's it, all done.
Yeah.
So we'll see who they bring in. There was talk of Jesse Marsh, but I think that might have fallen through now. So it's a big decision.
Let's see. However, that takes us to a result that I particularly enjoyed over the weekend, which was Leicester 4, Tottenham Hotspur 1. And I think the interesting with Tottenham is you think they've turned the corner and they beat Manchester City and played very well in that game. And then they get to Leicester and they can get absolutely trolleyed. Like, what's going on there?
I just can't fathom. It's they 1 week, literally the 1 week they're going and beating the champions and doing the league. They're doing Arsenal and Manchester United a massive favour. And I think it's just they have a thing about beating Man City, and then they follow it up immediately with, as you say, an absolute smashing against Leicester. Heung-Min Son, his form, it's come up on a few different people have mentioned this, but yeah, I totally agree. It's funny how things work out. Last season, Golden Boot winner, and really chasing down Mo Salah for the last few seasons, always there or thereabouts. This season, it just hasn't happened. I don't know if the World Cup build up, and I think he had an injury for the World Cup.
Yeah, Salah as well's not been quite on form this year. It's had very interesting impacts, but it shows, I think, partly as well the Premier League is such a good league in that there's quite a lot of unpredictability in terms of on any given day, anyone could beat anyone pretty much. I mean, it's quite rare that Manchester City get turned over unexpectedly. That's very, very rare. And if they do, it's normally by a better team. Like they've lost to Brentford, who higher up the table this year, and Tottenham as an example, and Man United, and I can't remember their other loss. But apart from probably Man City, anyone else can beat anyone else, it seems, this year.
Yeah, that's what makes the Premier League what it is. It's the best league in the world, and that's why you've got these clubs from these other leagues and countries that are desperate for a Super League, because at the minute they can't compete. You've got clubs like Fulham, clubs like Forest, Leeds, massive clubs in their own right, but you've got they're able to go up against and win and attract players that should be going to historically, Valencia, Sociedad. You even think about some Barcelona and Madrid players that they tend to be going to mid-table Premier League clubs.
Well, nice segue to Fulham there. Fulham 2, Nottingham Forest 0. Fulham just keep on delivering, and it's fascinating because Marco Silva, previously I didn't rate him with what I'd seen. I thought he was overrated. Everton, I think it was Watford, was it before?
Yep. He's getting a tune out of them. I'm saying that phrase a few times tonight, but it's great to see. It gets a bit boring, I think, for Fulham fans and for the rest of the Premier League football fans when you keep seeing the same teams coming up and then being relegated the same season. So it's nice to see Fulham, even Forest now pulling away. So I think we might be in for a little bit of a shake-up of teams next season.
Well, let's see. I mean, you're going to get a couple of teams. Well, someone like Southampton, who've been up for a long time, will go down. Maybe there'll be another team that've been around for a while go down, and then there'll probably be one of. I still think Forest could go down. I think Bournemouth will probably go. I think Southampton, Bournemouth plus one, and that could be any number of teams at the moment. But it's certainly. With Fulham, I always had a little soft spot for Fulham in that when Kevin Keegan took over them years and years ago, I sort of got into them. So I quite liked them then. But you just think, I mean, for me, as an Arsenal, we're going away to Fulham fairly soon. I think next month. We only just beat them at home at the start of the season. And an error from Gabriel, a common theme we'll perhaps be touching on. And it's going to be a really, really difficult match. And I think it's between the 2 Europa League matches as well, if memory serves correctly.
Fixture congestion, that's always the thing towards the end of the season for the
congestion. People said after the World Cup, they're playing 2 or 3 times a week. Arsenal was an example. I know they're out of cups, so they perhaps a bit easier, but they played like one game a week, and then they rested half the start 11 at the Man City FA Cup game. So actually, they're probably rusty more than anything. So I don't take the fixture congestion thing at least until the end of March. Then it starts getting a bit hairy.
Yeah. On that Fulham game, goal for Willian, obviously former Chelsea and Arsenal man. He's come back to the Premier League and he's starting to settle and fire now. Could be a bargain.
I think so. And I think speaking of bargains, you've got the other end of the scale: Man City 3, Aston Villa 1, and there's certainly not many bargains there. The amount of money they've spent, it's a huge expenditure. First game since the various charges, and you'd expect them to be Aston Villa at home without a question, and they delivered on that. So there's probably not too much more to say about that, really.
Yeah, I think regulation result there, moving towards a closing gap on Arsenal before the Arsenal City game, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, and then we get to Leeds against Man United. People say, "Oh, Leeds have got a chance. Leeds have got a chance." Probably not really. Man United. Ten Hag is such a good manager that if he plays you twice in a week, he's not going to let you get away with it the second time. He's done very, very well. I mean, Man United were, people talk about a rebuild job. I mean, they only has, Casemiro is amazing. Let's get out there first of all. Completely changed their midfield, and you'd expect so, some of his experience and quality. But the other thing is there was always some mistakes, like with Maguire and co. He's dropped him out the starting lineup early on in his reign. But the rest of the team they had, there's some very good players there already. They didn't have to do that much rebuilding. It's more of a case of the man management and the tactics, the mentality. But they got rid of a couple of those freeloaders like Pogba and whatnot, and they're actually in a really good team. People sort of saying, he's doing it quicker than Arteta, and he is doing it quicker than Arteta. But I think Arteta had a much bigger job on his hands because he didn't have people of the quality. He had two, didn't he? Had Aubameyang and Ozil, but they were, to an extent, Pogba-like at various points in terms of like effort and discipline. But he didn't really have any world-class players otherwise. So he had quite a big job. Klopp was quite quick when he took over. He got them to some finals and what have you, but he needed those big signings to get him over. But Man United looking very ominous, did it so quickly. So they've got an experienced manager in there, and they're certainly looking like they're almost I say shoe-in. You can never say shoe-in in the Premier League because, one or two bad results away, an injury away from a crisis these days, like if Rashford gets injured. But they're looking like a pretty much the top 3 is probably nailed on for Champions League spots. It's looking like at the moment. Yeah,
I think United Champions League spot is pretty much a given there. Rashford's having an incredible season. As you say, Ten Hag has made the tough decisions and made the right calls. I think, as you say, dropping out Maguire in the season, he's struggled. Every time he brings him back in, he seems to struggle again. So I don't know what that means for his long-term future there. Casemiro. That's the thing that is in the back of my mind for Manchester United. If Casemiro was to pick up an injury and miss a couple of months, obviously he's missing at the minute with the red card he picked up the other day. But you can see the difference in the middle of the park without him.
I think it's the same for Arsenal with Partey. They're both very, very reliant on that player. Man City could cope without Rodri.
They lose Rodri. They bring in Phillips, for example, and it's sorted.
It's those 3 are like the big 3 kind of sort of defensive midfielder, sort of deep pivots. I'm not quite sure what the right terminology is, but they're key for their teams. But speaking of key for teams, we had a Merseyside derby, 2-0 to Liverpool. I mean, again, you'd expect Liverpool to win that fairly comfortably at home, and Everton look relatively toothless, in particular in away matches. Like 1 win in goodness knows how long away.
Yeah, Liverpool finally getting some joy after a really poor run. Salah getting his first goal in a while, and Cody Gakpo getting his first for the club since joining in the January transfer window. Everton back to reality, really. Really good result against Arsenal, but I think it shows the size of the task for Sean Dyche there. But I definitely wouldn't rule out him pulling them out of the risk of relegation. he knows what he's doing. Look at what he did with Burnley. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting watch over the next few months.
I think so. So that concludes our review of the weekend games from last weekend. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.